I made a couple of short videos skipping you through everything quite quickly, and this is going to be a longer, slower video of what I would do when taking a first look at some data and doing some graphing, so feel free to skip through bits of this video if it gets a bit long. So I've got open the same data set here, and I guess one of the first things I would do when looking at the data is just having a quick look at the variable types, and this is new to at least I think the latest couple of versions of SPSS. I really don't think it used to show this, but I do like it. So when we're thinking about why we want to do graphs for data, part of it is for ourselves, in that we want to understand what our data is telling us, especially if someone else has given data to you. So obviously I do get people who hand me data when I haven't had anything to do with the research process, and I'm really trying to get a handle on what it is that they've done, what it is that they've measured, and of course what they're trying to find out. When you've collected it yourself, often you have a feel for what's going on with the data and you kind of know what to expect, but then you have to think about how best to communicate what you can see with your data. So this is the same data set from before. They were doing some intervention for depression, and the BDI stands for the Beck Depression Inventory. I probably ought to look that up to find out if a high score is better or lower, but I don't know that off the top of my head. So if I'm looking through these variables, and we've got a nice short data set here, the group would be the intervention group they're in, the age, the gender, and then a couple of other things that may or may not matter. Does it matter? Does marital status matter? Does education matter? And does medication matter? And then of course our outcomes of the depression pre and post. So if I was looking at this data for the first time, whether I had collected it or someone had given it to me, I would want to know what was going on. How many do I have in each group? What's my gender ratio? What kind of age distribution am I looking at? So if we think about how we would look at these things, we need to know what variable types we have in order to do an appropriate graph. For categorical variables, nominal and ordinal, I'd normally just start off with bar charts. Now ordinals are interesting variables because depending on what type of ordinal variable it is, if it was like a Likert scale where you rated something from 1 to 10, sometimes you actually want to treat them more like scale variables, sometimes you treat them more like nominal variables. We might leave that alone for the moment and just look at the difference between nominal and scale. So if we start off with just a nominal variable like gender, and we have a look at what is the gender ratio in this study. So I'm going to go to graphs, chart builder. Now let's work our way through from the simplest graphs. So the simplest bar chart we could do would be this one. I'm going to drag that in. And what is it that we want to have a look at? We just want to have a look at gender. So I'll drag that on. And then it says it's going to do count. That's fine. We could also ask it to do percentage. Might do that in a later video. That tends to get people a little bit confused. There's a few choices you have to make. Count will do for now. And we had a lot more women than men in the study. So simple bar count of sex. And if you were putting this into a paper, you wouldn't keep a title on there, but you would have a figure legend on it. If you're putting it into a poster, you've got a little bit more freedom what you do with it. Possibly I would change the title, and that's quite easy to do. If you click into it, you can change this. Or you could take it out altogether and put a figure legend in there. So that's a simple bar chart. So we know that we had, I'm pretty sure that's 8 men and we've got 40 women. Now we might be interested in, well, we know they had groups, intervention and control groups. What was the gender ratio in each of the intervention and control groups? So we have to think about what information are we trying to find out, and what is the best way to show that information. So now we've got 2 nominal variables, so we need to choose a different type of graph to fit the 2 variables onto it. And we've got these 2 choices here. Now there's no right or wrong, there's just different ways of doing it. Now if you've got 2 categorical variables. I think I went through and counted them up one time. There's like at least 16 different ways you can graph them. So it's about choosing how you want to show your data. I'm just going to reset that. If you ever get in a mess with your graphs and it won't show your OK button and stuff like that, just reset it. So I'm going to start with a clustered one. So again, well, now my main interest is in who is in the groups. So I'm going to try putting the group on the x-axis and the sex as the cluster colour. And again, I'm leaving this alone because that's where it's going to count up the number in each combination for me. Press OK. And that's okay, I can see what's going on there. So we've got about 4 men and 20 women in the treatment and control group. So that's fine. So the point of showing the graph, if you're putting this on a poster, would just be to show the reader, well, first it does show you your sample size because you've got a count, not a percentage, so I can actually see how many people were in it. But it just lets me see that the control and the treatment groups were roughly even. You could do it the other way around. So this is where people can get confused about what is the best thing to put where. So let me reset that and I'll show you what I mean. So I'll bring in the clustered bar chart again. This time I'm going to put sex on the x-axis and the group as the cluster colour and press OK. And so this is the same information but presented in a different way. So now if we look at the males, we can see that they were evenly split into the control and the treatment. And then if we look at the females, we can see they were evenly split into the control and the treatment. So both these graphs are showing us the same information. They're just doing it in a different way. There's no correct or incorrect, it's just about which one you prefer. So if the focus of what you were talking about was on the gender, then maybe you would prefer it this way. If you were trying to illustrate how your experiment had been designed, then you might want to do it this way. I think I'd probably choose this way, although actually I probably wouldn't even use a clustered bar chart. I do have a moderate preference for stacked ones. But there are some circumstances when the clustered ones look better. We won't. It's just personal choice, I think. If there's a lot of categories, sometimes these clustered ones can look better. If you want to see the range of categories within a group, they can look nicer. But a lot of the time, the stacked ones can be made a little bit more compact, so you can often fit a bit more information on them and make them smaller, and you can get more stuff in there. So I'm going to drag the group back down to here because I want to see it as the control and the treatment group, and drag gender up there as the stat colour. And so we could actually make this much smaller, this graph, and we would still be able to see the information. Not sure about the colours here, they're quite bright and might dampen them down again. If you're ever not sure what colours to use, well, I mean, if you're going to publish, you probably have to do them grayscale, but if for a poster, if you've got a bit more freedom, I would suggest fewer colours rather than more, and perhaps a muted colour palette, maybe not picking every single colour available, but a couple of shades of the same colour. So this red is really quite intense. We don't have a lot of choices here, do we? That's a bit better. Then maybe I would make that male a bit paler, but it's a bit less harsh on the eyes. And then I would probably take that out. So I'm just going to select that, and you can see when something's highlighted because it gets that yellow outline. So I'm just, now I deselected it. Hold on. And I'll just delete it, press delete to get rid of that. And if I was going to, so this is quite big at the moment, if I wanted to have this smaller, I would shrink this down in SPSS so that it changed the font sizes. So maintain aspect ratio means keep it that same sort of rectangular shape. I don't really want to do that. I think actually what I want to do is just reduce the width, because this is really quite wide and we don't need that. So I might just reduce that width down to 4. And that's fine. I could cram another graph in next to it now if I wanted to. I'll just leave that there. So that's bar charts. trying to think if we should, we could have a look at another one. So if we, just to look at the difference between different bar charts, I suppose. So if, for example, we were now interested in, let's say education, I'm just going to drag that out, and I'm going to drag education in. We've got a lot more categories here now. So if you had all these categories, one, you need to be a lot more careful with your colours, and you might want to fade from very pale grey to dark grey, because that's a bit difficult to read. We would also need to have in what these labels were, because I don't know what education 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 are, and I really don't think that file came with any information. If I open up the two, three, four, so it was mostly 6. So whatever 6 is the, sorry, mostly yellow. That looks right, 16 and 18 for the college university. Don't know what complex is short for. So possibly we're going backwards through, oh look, the vocational school, 0 and 3, so that would be that blue one that only appeared on one of them. Anyway, for your own data, hopefully you've actually recorded code, so you don't have to try and work out what each of these stand for. So for this kind of graph, I would be very careful about the colour choice, and I might even, maybe I would do a clustered one for that. And if you're not sure, try them both ways and see which one looks better. Okay, what I might do is stop this video here, and then I will start it again just so I can upload them as separate videos, and we'll look at some graphs for continuous variables.